Well, good morning, friends. Obviously, I'm speaking to you with the sun in my eyes. But I wanted to do an introduction here to the video that's eventually going to take perhaps several weeks to get accomplished. And what I want to talk about is pucking your gunpowder twice. Now, I understand what Jake has been saying on the channel Everything Black Powder, and he actually left a comment underneath one of my videos speaking to the same thing. So, from a full disclosure perspective, the last batch of gunpowder that I made with the basswood with the 75, 15, 11 formula, I took one puck. Once I compressed it with my 12-ton jack, I broke it up and tried to recompress it again. When it come out of the puck, it completely disintegrated. So at that point, I was willing to view pucking twice as a inconclusive fact. But I'm not giving up, and neither should Jake. Here's the thing. Once again, I get invited to put on a seminar at the Cache La Plew Mountain Man Rendezvous that's coming up very shortly. And because I agreed to do it, I decided to make another batch of gunpowder. I made a double batch of my gunpowder that I used juniper as the charcoal. Since we've already determined it burns fast, it burns hot, and it burns very clean. So what I'm going to do, and what I have already done, is I've made the gunpowder. I've milled it. Now I will tell you guys, just for the sake of consistency, it took me 38 hours to get this batch of gunpowder to, compress and leave the media on top. I did not stir it up, mix it up, and run it longer. That's just a straight milling time. Okay, I was really surprised to see that it took this long to achieve what we would basically say it's done. But something else that I want to also mention, okay, and I've mentioned this before, I use lead round balls, and if you can look real closely, you can see that sprue. Now, for those of you that have been following this channel for any length of time, these are the original lead balls that I used. But I use a 60-40 lead mixture, 60 pounds of lead, 40 pounds of tin. So these lead balls are very hard. And I think we could all probably readily agree that the amount of lead dust left behind is extremely minimal, if any at all. Okay, now just to kind of give everybody a baseline of what I'm going to do, and bearing in mind what I just recently spoke to about it crumbling when I tried to compress it a second time. At that time, I may not have had enough water to allow me to crumble it up and then compress it a second time into the puck. And the whole thought behind that is coming up with a gunpowder that's much more dense. Now, right now, in this moment in time, I'm having a little difficulty reconciling compressing it twice, increasing the density, because from my perspective, I'm only using a 12-ton jack, which is 24,000 pounds per square inch. So once you take that puck that's already compressed at 24,000 pounds per square inch, break it up and recompress it again, you're still only compressing it to 24,000 pounds. But I may stand corrected at the end of this video, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate half of this, take half of it to Cache La Plew. When I come back, I will compact that gunpowder one time what I'm separating right now, I will puck twice. But this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a little bit more water than what's normal, so that when I break it up, I'm using that water to help compress and compact that gunpowder a second time. And obviously, to find out whether I have to eat my words or say, yeah guys, the chronograph proves the difference, because I'm going to absolutely keep these two gunpowders separated, and the proof will be in the chronograph. So let's stay tuned and see what the end results are going to be. I'm hoping the camera is sufficiently picking this up, but I actually moistened up this batch of gunpowder more than I normally do, just for the sakes of compacting it twice. And you can see, I'm hoping, that there's moisture coming out from the bottom of my pucking dies. So I'm going to break it up and repuck it, and we'll see what happens. So actually, before I do that, here's the puck, and you can see that it's fairly thin. And I actually like doing that just simply because what I now do, when I get it out of my pucking dies, at this point I actually break them up by hand into smaller pieces to help the drying time. And also, the last batch I made, I discovered that there was actually less 4F. Whether that'll happen this time or not, I don't know. But I'm going to get this broken up and try to repuck it. Alright, this is the second time I pucked it. And if you can kind of see, I hope, that there's still moisture coming out through the bottom of the pucking die, which would indicate to me there's enough moisture in there at this time to compress it twice. So I'm going to put the camera down, dislodge the puck, and we'll see what the result is. I'm hoping it doesn't crumble apart like it did on my first attempt with the basswood. Alrighty, there's the puck, and as you can see, it didn't crumble apart, so that indicates to me I have enough moisture at this time to compact it twice, as opposed to the first time I tried it with my basswood and it just crumbled coming out of the pucking die. But the true test will be, as I mentioned earlier, keeping these separated, the ones that I pucked twice and the ones that I pucked once, through the chronograph. So I'm going to get busy in getting this done, at least for now, and hopefully we'll see if there's any measurable difference between through the chronograph. Okay, for the sake of consistency, and as I stated earlier, once I get the puck out of the die, I break them up into smaller pieces so they'll dry quicker. I will note, for my own self personally, breaking up the puck that's compressed twice broke up a lot easier than it did if I only pucked it once. That's just a note for myself, friends. Take it for what it's worth. Alright, for the sake of consistency, that's the second puck. There's the first puck. Like the first puck, this puck broke up very easily. Now, I'm not ready to concede or give up on it. I'm just, for the time being, contributing that to there being more moisture in the gunpowder. But ultimately, when I shoot these through the chronograph, the truth will be in the numbers. So before we get on to the shooting portion of this video, I would like to take some time and address a comment in my comment section regarding a comment that I had made about taking the seasoning out of your gun barrel with a detergent such as Dawn. We all know how the advertising commercial world goes. Dawn takes grease out of the way. Well, with that thought in mind, that's why I do not clean my black powder guns with any type of detergent, because a detergent soap does take the seasoning out of any type of metal. Doesn't matter how well today's metallurgy is. If you just allow me some time, I will go through this and be as thorough as I can. Okay? Now we all know the nature of cast iron. Cast iron is basically carbon and steel, and it has to be poured into a mold. At that point, cast iron cannot be put in a forge and reshaped because it's very brittle, and at the same time it's very porous. So yes, you do want to season your cast iron because it is a poorer quality of metal, and to properly season cast iron you have to put it like in an oven, forget what the temperature range is, put some oil on it and let that oil cook in to the pores. So basically what's happening is as that cast iron is heating up, the pores are opening up and that oil is allowed to get into the pores, basically penetrate into the pores. Once that cast iron cools down, those pores seemingly close up and it captures that oil into the metal structure. That's why you can look at cast iron and see that really well seasoned cast iron, I might add. You can see that real glossy, shiny look. But the comment was made that today's metallurgy does not allow, or it's not required to season your gun barrels. Well, you may or may not disagree, but all metals have a grain structure, okay? And unless you have a highly, highly, highly polished gun barrel on the inside, you will, in time, have rust begin to grow on those scratches. Even machining a gun barrel leaves scratches behind. Now, every time you use a detergent and clean your gun barrel, you are removing what would be a seasoned gun barrel. And I'm going to expand on that in just a moment. But every time you clean your gun, and even if you use a detergent and you run a lubricated patch down that gun barrel, you're still re-seasoning that gun barrel. So when folks such as myself use the terminology seasoned gun barrel, you have to realize that seasoning in this construct is a very, very broad application. For instance, when you chemically blue your gun barrels, you are still seasoning that gun barrel. That gun barrel presumably is heated up and that chemical bluing is introduced into the grain structure. That becomes a rust inhibitor. That is, in one sense, the broad use of the term, seasoning the gun barrel on the outside. When you case harden a frame, you heat up the metal, you expand the grain structure, and then you introduce your hardening compound, then you quench it, which closes up the grain structure. In the broadest use of the term seasoning, you have now made that case hardened frame rust resistant, which is seasoning your gun in the broadest sense of the term. Okay? So let me just kind of show you something here. These are my steel cooking pans that I have used at rendezvous for decades. I have never used a detergent on these pans to clean them. Much like cast iron, I just put some water in it, heat up the water, and then I use my pot scrubber to clean them. If you can kind of see, I'll try to get it reflective in the sunlight here, you can see that seasoning on this steel pan. Here's my other steel pan, which is much older than the previous one I just showed. I've been carrying this for about 25 years. I do not introduce any detergent. Dawn takes grease out of the way. Much like cast iron, you do not want to introduce a detergent soap onto your cast iron because it will remove that seasoning, which is nothing more than a thin coat of oil that prevents water or moisture from clinging. Okay, here's another example. This is a knife that I built probably close to 30 years now. This is a Bowie knife, and if you can look at that blade is highly polished. It is not stainless steel. This was actually forged from a chainsaw bar. But what I did in the manufacturing process, I sanded it down to about 1800 grit. What I effectively did was close up any little micro scratch, any little scratch on that surface that moisture could cling to and start the rusting process. The same holds true with this particular revolver. It's not stainless steel, but it is highly, highly polished metal. When things are highly polished in themselves, that acts as a rust inhibitor. Now, the inside of your gun barrels, unless they're lined with a stainless steel liner, they can and will rust if not properly taken care of. Another good example of the broad usage of the term seasoning a barrel. Think about it in these terms. Naturally browning your barrel. You take that gun barrel, you get rid of all of the oils from your fingers from handling it, and then once you get it sufficiently clean, you will put it, some guys will put it into a sweat box with some with a heat source such as lamps and some little containers holding water, and within a short amount of time all of those scratches that are on the outside of the gun barrel begin to rust. The longer you leave it, the more it begins to rust. But how do you stop that rusting? You have to introduce an oil, which is part of a seasoning process. Okay? So not to want to split hairs in this regard. We just have to understand that seasoning a gun barrel is really a broad use of that term. And even if you do have a properly seasoned gun barrel or cast iron, does not mean that it is absolutely corrosion resistant, because it is. It's very much, but it just takes a longer length of time to do it. So as you may see, what I have right here is what I clean my gun barrels with. And I use 3 equal parts of Murphy's oil soap, rubbing alcohol, and hydrogen peroxide. And I have cleaned my guns for decades using this formula right here. And I can guarantee you, like anybody else in the comment section, I can drop a bore light down my barrels and they shine like a mirror. That becomes a useless argumentative point, because whether you clean your gun barrels with this or whether you elect to take the seasoning out of your gun barrel and re-oil it, it's going to shine, because oil is reflective. You don't believe me? Look at a parking lot sometime with a bright sunshine on an oil spot and you'll see the rainbow. It's reflective. So that's all I really have to say about that, is that just bear in mind, everybody is responsible for cleaning their guns any way they want. There's a ton of products on the market, from Ballistol all the way down to cleanse oil. Now, I started using this cleanse oil probably a year ago, particularly in my semi-automatic handguns, because this is advertised to remove lead deposits and copper deposits, and it's advertised as a cleaner. If you go on YouTube, type in cleanse oil, you're going to see some videos. Obviously, there's some guys in the market that swear to high heaven this is crap, and then there's guys on there that swear to high heavens this is the best stuff on the market. Take it all in and then make your own decision. But I will tell you, I've been pleased with this, because this does also help in re-seasoning your gun barrel, because this is a penetrating type oil. And I myself, I'm not endorsing it, I'm not getting paid to do this, but this does work very, very well in my application and in my usage of this product. But once again, there's hundreds and hundreds of items from Hoppy's number 9. Some people will only use Hoppy's number 9. Some people will only use Ballistol. When it comes to me cleaning my muzzle loaders, I either use this, or if I'm at a rendezvous and I don't want to take the time to clean my gun barrel this thoroughly, I just introduce hot water and a scrub brush and I'm good to go, because my barrel has a very good layer of oil in between the lands and grooves. And for me, that's more than adequate enough. So let's head out to the range and let's see if pucking your gunpowder twice really is that effective. Well, it's typical, a little bit of a breeze, but I'm going to go ahead and run this test anyhow, just to kind of let you guys know I will be shooting these 2 gunpowders by volume, not by weight. 70 grains. I will be shooting 5 rounds so that I can get an average. The first 5 rounds will be with the gunpowder that I pucked 1 time. So let's see what kind of numbers we can get. .490 round ball, and I am using the 4F that I recovered when I pucked my gunpowder twice. So that's the 4F that I'm using right here. $14.78. Obviously, that hung on me. Let me see what I got. Same number. Let me reshoot that. $14.07. I do have to admit, I'm still a little nervous shooting through that chronograph because the last thing I want to do is punch a hole in it. Another hang fire. Let's see what we got. $14.40. Might have to re-nap my flint. $14.13. I'm going to take one more shot to compensate for that second shot that I think was a duplicate. I actually changed out the flint. Still hanging up just a little bit. Let me go get that number. Okay, this is the gunpowder that I pucked twice. And I should just let everybody know that I actually stopped grinding at about a 2F, if that's got to make any difference to anybody. So let's see what she does. I pulled that one. $14.59. $14.50. $14.69. $14.71. Now, as far as the 4F, I'm just kind of guessing what I'm dropping because it's not really flowing out of this measure as well as the factory 4F does. So that's why perhaps I'm overcharging it just a little bit. I pulled it. 1421. I'm going to go ahead and redo that because I noticed that I spilt a little bit of the powder pulling the flask out of the end of the barrel. So let me get one more recording. $14.36. So after crunching some numbers, what do they tell us? Well, the gunpowder that I pucked one time, I got an average speed of 1437.4 feet per second with an overall spread of 71. The gunpowder that I pucked twice, crunching the numbers, I got an overall average speed of 1457 with a spread of 35. So taking those two numbers and doing the math, the only difference really is 20 feet per second in a spread of 36. Make of it what you will. In my mind, the only benefit to pucking it twice is you have a lesser spread and the numbers seem to be a little bit more consistent. Just rereading the numbers of the gunpowder I pucked twice, the first shot was 1459, second shot was 1450, the third shot was 1469, the fourth shot was 1471, and the fifth shot was 1436. So the numbers seem to be a little bit more consistent with less of a spread pucking it twice. But my overall question is this: are you less dead at 1437 feet per second or more dead at 1457 feet per second? I'll leave that up to you to decide. Whether it's worth my time pucking the gunpowder twice, I'll have to decide that later. Now there is one variable in all of this that I probably should mention because someone's going to mention it. The only shot that was clean going down that barrel was the very, very first shot with the gunpowder that I pucked one time. And in a clean barrel, 70 grains by volume, I did settle it, level it off. I got a speed of 1478. Whereas in that dirty barrel, the fourth shot of the gunpowder puck twice, I got 1471. So shooting your gunpowder down a clean barrel will make a huge difference. But there again, when I'm on the shooting range, whether I'm at a rendezvous or not, I don't clean between shots. I just run a spit patch and I'm good to go. And in fact, I should also add to this video, I did pick up several of the patches and they were just as clean as the patches that I've showed before regarding this gunpowder made with juniper as the charcoal. So anyhow, that is what it is. Thank you so much for indulging me and watching this video. I certainly hope that you'll take the time, if you haven't already, to like and subscribe. And don't forget to share this with your bestest of buds. Bye.